Welcome to the Front End Nerdery podcast, a podcast about front end design, development, and anything else that may come up in the course of the day. And let me tell you, I have something that I've been waiting to do a long time here, and that's talk about the job market. I'm Todd Libby. I'm your host, and with me today is, I value this guy because this guy didn't know me from Adam, and then I walk up to him at a conference after his talk, and I said, you know what, that talk was awesome. I'm going to take this knowledge with me. I'm going to use it. And did I use it? Yes, I did. And I would say a couple weeks, maybe more after, I got a job putting his words into action. So with me today is Taylor Desseyn. Taylor, how are you? And recruiter extraordinaire. You're a wizard when it comes to this stuff. And guys like me, we need all the help we can get. So I'm going to introduce you that way, and then I'll let you fill in the blanks around that. How's that sound?
I love it. I love it. No, Todd, thank you again for having me. It's a pleasure to be on here. I never take this for granted. I always say that as a recruiter, I understand that I've had an uphill climb in the software engineering world to be accepted and to be able to be invited onto your show and anybody else's show podcast is a blessing. So thank you for having me. I've been at this thing for over 12 years now. I've really seen the behind the scenes of, at this point, thousands of job seekers and probably close to 30,000 job seekers. And then in terms of companies hiring and scaling, at least 1,000. And so basically what I've realized is I can communicate the best way to do things and to stay away from a lot of the pitfalls that I've seen through social media. And so that's really my medium to storytell and to educate and to obviously get me introduced to wonderful people like yourself.
Well, don't let that secret out of the bag just yet. that it might be a little wonderful, but no, I'm just kidding. We were just at Magnolia together.
Yep.
And I caught your first talk, which is, your talks are just, if it's sitting in for 5 minutes or sitting in through the whole thing, I always get something out of your talk. So I want to personally thank you for that.
Absolutely.
First of all. So, are you ready to dive into those hard hitting questions?
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. Hard hitting. I love it. I love it. I love hard hitting questions because people don't usually like to answer them, and I like to get into it.
Yeah. So, we're looking at a time in tech now that is a very volatile job market. Coming from my perspective anyways, if somebody's coming to you and saying, hey, can you can you help me with getting a job, and they're very unsure about the situation going on with, we have had all these layoffs, and companies are going through turnover rates with people. What would you tell the people who are looking to you for help, what the job market is like now and where you think that it is going to, in which direction?
Yeah, it sucks, right? I mean, there's just no better way to say it. Right now, it is it sucks, but I do see some silver linings. So let me explain. So obviously, from 2020 to 2022, the tech industry, especially the engineering community, experienced growth in hiring that I don't think we've seen in a long time. It's never happened in my 12 years of staffing. And you could argue that I've been in the hiring world during essentially no bad times, right? There's been, I got in 2011. The last downturn was in 2008. I was not recruiting then. I was still in college. And so basically, what we're experiencing now is a correction from the last 2 years, right? And so there is a lot of layoffs, a lot of companies overhired. And listen, it's on record. That's why I like podcasting, because it's on the record. If you go back and listen, I called it that we were at a clip that we could not sustain. And
Right.
so what's happened is that the companies are every company over the last year is correcting itself, right? Whether it's a layoff of 10%, whether it's a layoff of 50%. Those I would be interested to see the stats, but those are directly correlated, most likely, in my opinion, to how much they overhired, right? So they laid off 10%, they're probably overhired at least by 10%, right? So so that's something that we're definitely dealing with. And I would say, if a job seeker, I've had a lot of people come to me right now, I go, Taylor, how do I find a job? What do I do in this market? My biggest thing is go to gun.io/Taylor. I have a bunch of free resources there. I cannot help every single person. And I feel awful. Right. I really, really do. Like if it was up to me, and I've thought about this. I've thought about a way to like come up with some sort of pricing tier structure where I could be a little bit more committed to everybody. But until the company stop cutting us the checks and individuals start cutting us the checks, I unfortunately am at the disposal of the company, because the company pays, the individual doesn't, right? And so, so what I've done is I've tried to create a massive amount of content for people to go through. So if you go to gun.io/Taylor, it's there. But my biggest piece of advice, if you're listening to this in the future and you're like, Taylor, I'm too lazy to go do that, just can you tell me now? Yeah, you're going to have to do something different. Right. The whole thing of sleepwalking through interviews is long gone. If you're a junior developer, just doing your capstone project at a boot camp with no volunteer experience or no internship experience is not enough anymore. If you're a senior dev and you're only mass applying, it's not enough anymore. Right. I mean, there's, I've talked to so many head of engineering and VP and director level people who are like, we get 300 senior developers. I had a head of engineering text me the other day. He goes, I had 15 senior resumes final round that I could have hired all 15 if I had the budget, but he goes, I have to pick one. Right. And so it's very competitive right now. I think the power of referrals is incredibly important. And you're probably like, well, Taylor, how do I get a referral? You got to show up to meetups. You got to show up to conferences. You got to show up to the Discords, the Slack channels, start endearing yourself to the community you want to be a part of. I would say those are some pretty substantial building blocks. I think a lot of people aren't doing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably we'll get into this in a little bit, but myself, I definitely understand that, because I've been doing the Discords and LinkedIn, well, not as much lately, but LinkedIn and conferences, and even going as far as doing workshops at conferences so that I can get my name out there. So, and normally I don't do workshops as much as I used to. So yeah, that's all, solid advice. When we originally talked, and I was like, hey, what you said worked. I remember you telling me a little bit about that. And so I definitely took that.
I do want to say this as you're talking. One thing popped up to me, and I've been having a lot of these conversations with people. You need to be having 2 conversations a day. 2 conversations a day. One conversation needs to be with a complete stranger in a company area field that you want to work in, that you get off of LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever. Yep. And then the other conversation needs to be somebody in your network who to check in on them. So 2 conversations a day. That's it. You're probably like, Taylor, that doesn't sound like a lot. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of reach outs to get somebody on the phone. So it's gonna be a full-time job. And I've put people through this framework and I have held them accountable. I do one-on-one counseling sessions for people. And the people who have done the one-on-one counseling sessions with me, and we've walked through them 15-minute calls once a week, they have all found a job. Yep. And it hasn't been overnight. Some's taken 3 months, some's taken 6 months, but they've all found a job because they've stayed consistent in networking. But it's the hardest part of the job search that no one talks about and no one teaches.
Yeah. And those are the things I think that if more people knew, we might not have as many people, I wouldn't be seeing as many people going, hey, I'm open to a new role, or I'm looking for a new role. I think, these people would be getting those jobs. Yeah. Speaking of jobs and finding jobs, I mean, I've tried to help people getting into, tech as much as I can with my knowledge. And then other people, that are on the level that I'm at, these aren't, these aren't just wisdom sprinkles. These are senior developer issues and accessibility stuff.
I just got my hair dyed so I can be like Todd. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So for the junior out there, for the junior or somebody that is just like, you know what, I'm fresh out of college or whatever, or looking to get into tech, what are you going to how should they be looking for a job at that point in time? And then second part of that is, how should the senior dev or whatever be looking for the same, those jobs that are tailored for them?
At the end of the day, the answer doesn't change too much for both, and it's networking. But let me explain a little bit more, because I'm sure people are so freaking tired of hearing the word networking. Like, great, networking. Networking. So let me break it down a little bit, because again, I never really understood how to network until recently. And I really want to break it down for juniors and seniors. So juniors, right? So let's say you just graduated boot camp, maybe you're self-taught. I have a huge heart for junior devs. I think every developer has a heart for junior devs, right? It's the hardest break into. We feel for you. I always say, every time I see a junior developer post on social media, an angel gets his wings, is what I say. I like a little Charles Dickens kind of quote in there. Yeah. But if you're a junior developer, I've talked to so many people who have found jobs because they've merely just texted people they know of their mom and dad's friends, or like aunt and uncles, or like literally one guy who I know who actually helped build. So I'm going to take this example. Jordan Ryerson. I use him because this dude did everything I asked him to do, and he's found a job. Jordan Ryerson hit me up. I didn't know Jordan at the time. He hit me up randomly. He goes, "Hey, dude, been following you for a while." First off, props to him. He used admiration and flattery in the DM. It gets people's attention. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to expand my software development skills. Do you have any free work that I can take on? And I was like, well, yeah. Because here's the deal. Everybody, for the most part, any business owner is going to have free work. Now, here's the deal. I have people come at me with pitchforks. They're like, well, I'm not in a position to take on free work. Well, then don't. It's very black and white. If you and you're in a position where you can't afford to take on free work, then don't take on free work. I'm not asking you to do something against your will, but what I'm saying is what all Jordan did is he asked for free work. I gave him a project to create my other podcast, because I have 16,000 of them, because a man can't have more than, man can't have enough podcasts. But I said, I need you to build something for my podcast, The Unicorn Finders. And he goes, okay, great. Built the site, put it on his portfolio. Mm-hmm. Then recently got a job because of that on his resume and portfolio. And I'm pretty sure, if I can remember, and Jordan, send me a text if you listen to this and I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the person he got a job with like knew him or knew his family, or like knew, it was one of those where like he knew somebody of knew somebody. Right. And I think what happens is that people, while I do talk a lot about talking to strangers and getting out of your comfort zone and like having these conversations, you can't underestimate the power of your network. The reason why I landed a job to start my career at Vaco, my previous company I was working at, was because there was this girl who lived in my hometown, who we all moved up here together, kind of sort of randomly together. And I asked this girl, I said, do you know anybody? That's all I said. I said, as I'm looking for a 9-to-5, do you know anybody? She goes, well, I nanny for somebody that does pretty well. I said, great. Can you ask what they do? She calls me and goes, they're looking for a recruiter. Do you want to be a recruiter? Like, what the hell is a recruiter? And 3 days later, I'm a recruiter, and I've never looked back. Right. So I've just asked somebody who I knew. And so if you're a junior, dig in to your contact list in your phone, see who's running a business, see mom and pop shop, take on free work, and then obviously continue to nurture those relationships. Keep talking to random people. Right. So that's my suggestion for junior developers. For senior engineers, right, you're probably at a point where you're not taking on a bunch of free work, which I get that. But from a senior engineer perspective, I think you got to be on social media. I think you got to be on the Twitter. I think you got to be on LinkedIn. Now, my brother, who may listen to this, he's a senior product owner at Eventbrite. He has done incredibly well in his career with networking. He has no social media presence whatsoever. So he's going to listen to this and be like, well, Taylor's wrong. Don't listen to him. Right. But I will say this. I've never talked to a senior engineer who has dove into the social media world. I'm not asking you to be a Mr. Beast. I'm not asking you to be a full-time content creator. All I'm asking you to do is leverage the tools in front of you to network with people. And what is network with people? Network with people is Todd tweets about something about lobster rolls. I like it. And then I ask him a question. Todd, I've seen a lot of different ways to eat lobster rolls. What's your favorite? Todd tweets me back and he tells me his favorite ranked from first to third. And I go, that's great. Then what happens if I'm having a lobster roll in 2 weeks? I'm going to take a picture and tag Todd. Hey, Todd, I'm having a lobster roll. Thinking about you, buddy. Right? Todd and I at that point would have never met. But you know what that's done is that it's endeared me to Todd. Right. And I think that's what people don't understand about social media. Social media, they think about TikTok and kids dancing and it being weird and whatever. I get it. There's a lot of it out there. But for me, I have just dove into social media to leverage and to get in rooms. I have gotten in so many rooms with people who I never deserved to be in rooms with because I've just leveraged the heck out of social media in that kind of format. Right now, I have a podcast. Listen, it's a lot easier to get people in a room if you have a podcast.
Yeah.
A lot easier. Right. If you're a senior person in your career, quite honestly, I would have a podcast. They're probably like, well, Taylor, I don't really want to do a podcast. I don't have the equipment. Here's the deal. It doesn't matter. All a podcast is basically something that forces you to talk to somebody in an intentional manner. Right. I talk all the time moving to Nashville. Singer-songwriters, songwriting is like podcasting. It's the ultimate networker. Basically, when I moved to Nashville, my lead singer would get in a room with 2 or 3 other songwriters and they would write for like 8 hours a day for like sometimes a week. Listen, if you're going to spend that much time with a stranger, you're going to become friends with them.
Yep.
Right. And it's the same thing with podcasts. So if I'm senior, do a podcast, do something to cause you to engage with people. But then if you're also senior, speak at a meetup, speak at conferences, be public, be visible, get involved in a Discord. I've got a Discord. James Quick's got a Discord. Everyone's got Discords, right? So like you leverage them. So yeah, those are my 2 strategies for juniors and seniors.
Yeah. And it makes sense too, because, you get yourself out there, people are so, okay, I'm going to be, a little pat myself on the back here, but before before the pandemic, I think I did. I think I've earned that right to pat myself on the back, actually.
I agree.
Before the pandemic, I'm going in and I'm just doing what I normally do for the, past 20 some odd years. And then all of a sudden pandemic hits and I'm like, okay, well, now I'm going to be stuck at home for who knows how long. What am I going to do to pass the time that I'm just, because a guy like me, this is the carnival up here, and once that carnival gets going, man, is it chaos and just
Right.
Madness. So podcast, I did all these getting myself out there and doing my first talk was at a virtual conference, Bar Camp Philly. And then it went from there. A year later, I'm talking to 9 people in a room at Connect Tech in Atlanta. And then over time, the crowds have grown, and
yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah.
It's social proofing, right? And again, I'm sure people listen to this and get so tired of me talking about the same thing, but like there is a push, or there is not even a push, just like there's a trend, an observation of mine that the people who can social proof their career, as in put things out online to show what they can do. Like, for example, I just tweeted this right before this. I tweeted in 6 months of being at Gun.io, I've been able to bring in 5 new companies that have needed help staffing up engineering talent. Love being able to work with hiring managers to solve problems and creating content. You know why I tweeted that? Is because there are people who I interviewed with before I ended up at Gun.io that found me on Twitter that have been keeping up with my journey.
Right.
Because I get DMs from those companies, right?
Yep.
And like I just want to show them like kind of what they missed out on a little bit, right?
Exactly.
And so, but like also telling a story, right? Like, if a CEO or CTO sees that on my Twitter, like, oh shit, well, he's brought in 6 clients already, then he must be doing something right. We maybe need to work with him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's the same thing. If you're a React engineer and you're tweeting about React and blah, 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 again, a bunch of buzzwords I don't know about, right? You're eventually going to cause, it's FOMO, right? And it's what I call like a professional FOMO, where it's like, oh, well, Todd's talking about accessibility. I don't know what accessibility is. That's FOMO. I don't know. That's FOMO. I feel left out because Todd's talking about it. I don't know about it. I want to learn more from Todd. Right. And so that's what the power of social proof in your career is. Again, I'm not asking you to be a full-time content creator. All I'm asking you to do is talk about what you're doing. That's it.
Yeah. So and you don't need all the fancy equipment that you
You
see.
don't.
That's one thing that I tell people all the time is, they're like, hey, you do a podcast and yours is pretty good. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's a low budget podcast because I got this microphone right here and I have my webcam in my laptop
And we're using
that's
Zoom.
it. Yeah.
Right.
That's all I need. I don't need to go out and buy $6,000 worth of equipment as much as I'd love to and set up this professional,
because it's going to
type
take you
deal.
6x the time to figure out how to set it up and then
Exactly.
operationalize it. And then by the time you figure that out, Todd's already put out 16 episodes.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Jason Langsdorff, I'll never forget Jason Langsdorff, right? He went full time for content creation. And
Yep.
I think it was a live that he and I were on together. And he was talking about how he was like, I got to get the camera. Well, he moved in his beautiful studio. Like, he's got this beautiful studio, dude, like really cool stuff. And he basically admitted on my live, and I don't know if it was my live mail, maybe a piece of content he put out. So Jason, if you listen to this, like I do, sorry if I'm misquoting, but he basically said, he goes, he says, I got my dream studio. And he goes, I realized I hadn't put out any content in a month.
Yeah.
Because he goes, I was too busy with the gear and the tinkering. And he goes, I realized, I looked up after a month and goes, oh shit, I haven't put anything out in 30 days. And so again, I'm not asking you to go spend money. I know a lot of people have messaged me and they're like, well, I can't do what you're doing. Here's the deal. I literally started my entire content journey talking on my phone.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. And I had Jason on a few episodes ago and we talked about this. I don't remember if we talked about it. I know we talked about it in the podcast. I think we might have talked about it before we recorded or after we recorded, but
yeah,
I remember him distinctively saying that to me as well, as he hadn't done anything for X amount of time.
Yep.
So I'm going to pivot here and I'm going to go to recruiting and here's where, you and I've joked around with you about this a lot with, I'll go on LinkedIn on a Sunday and some recruiter saying, hey, I got this really cool data analyst position for 40,000 a year. Do you want to talk about it? And I'm like, well, first of all, it's Sunday. And, secondly, I'm in accessibility. So data analyst, no, I'm not making that, and pretty much ignoring it. And, they're, and you pretty much, you said they're playing catch up. They want to hit their numbers and they're trying to play catch up. My long and winding question here. Okay.
You're just like me. You're just like me. We'll get to the plot eventually. Listen while we get there, please.
We'll get there. This is the setup here. How do I use my recruiter to my advantage so that I'm not, it may take 3 months, 6 months, like you said, but how do I use my recruiter efficiently and to my advantage so that it's not taking 9 months, a year, 2 years?
Yeah. I mean, I think in my opinion, a recruiter is the most underrated form of Google out there. All right. People think recruiters are transactional. We are. Most of us are, right? Like if we can't help you, we move on. And that's true. But if you have us for 15 minutes, you can ask us a lot of questions to gain a lot of insight on the market and where you stand, right? So now I'm not asked, because a lot of people are like, well, does that mean I have to make calls to every single person that reaches out? No, you don't have to. But what I would do is here's some basic questions I would ask a recruiter to get them on call. First off, can you critique my resume and my LinkedIn real fast? Can you give me one nugget of something I should change? Right? They'll tell you, right? The second thing is ask them if they are getting any positions based off of, like, if they get any positions like what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the commonality or like the cadence of those type of positions, right? So, if you talk to a recruiter and you're a .NET developer, you're like, hey, I mean, I'm a .NET Angular, Razor, Azure, blah, 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 gal. And I'd be like, well, how many positions are you seeing within my salary and within this like framework? they could say, oh, we get 1 or 2 a month, or we get 15 a month. So then you can kind of gauge the interest of the market a little bit, right? Another question I would ask them, how's my salary compared to everybody kind of my skill set, right? Be open with this, like be vulnerable with this question. A lot of people don't like to share salaries with recruiters. Listen, I get it, but at the end of the day, like if you share your salary with a recruiter, they can tell you if you're too high or too low. Now, if you're too high, you need to listen to them, right? If they tell you like, hey, listen, you're just priced out, like, and it happens a lot. take into account with that. So I'm trying to think of some other questions that would be really good. I mean, those are the big ones, right? Resume, LinkedIn critique. Where do I stand on my salary? Where do I stand on my skill set? Yeah, I think those are the big ones just off the top of my head. But I have other questions to ask recruiters. If you do go to my website, gun.io/Taylor, I have a bunch of other questions as it relates to if they send you a role specifically, like what questions to ask about the role. But even if a recruiter doesn't contact you about a role, there's still some information that you can glean from them. And then that way you feel like your conversation is more fruitful than most ghosting that happens with recruiters, because at least then you'll get like something from them.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned the ghosting, because I see a lot of people, I got to the 4th round and I got ghosted, or I got to 5th round and get ghosted.
Yep.
And I won't go on the tangent, but 3 interviews, I am done. If that process is taking more than 3 interviews, then there's something fundamentally wrong at that organization that they need to correct. Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but hiring is so fractured and broken. I've been ghosted. A lot of people I know are, and
I've been ghosted. My latest job search, I was ghosted. They ghosted me.
So let me ask you this. To maintain a positive outlook, because if, in the past when I've been ghosted, I'm just like, Jesus, come on. That's kind of like a slap in the face. At least give me something to work with. No, even the auto responder email, sorry, but while you looked fantastic on paper,
right,
we hired somebody else. What would you say to somebody, especially juniors? What would you say to somebody about, you got ghosted, keep pushing forward, keep going forward, stay positive? What would you say to them?
Listen, I get it feels like you're in an echo chamber to a certain extent, right? Like if you are getting ghosted consistently, it's exhausting because you don't know where you stand, right? Because that's what I talk about is look for the nuances of why you get rejected and see if there's a common theme, right? If you're too overpriced, maybe you got to raise your salary, lower your salary a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. My biggest thing is ghosting mainly happens because it's hard to scale the interview process intentionally. It's hard, right? Because right now, if there's 300 applications for one job opening, there's no way to be intentional with 299 rejections. There's just not. Now, companies, if you do listen to this, and this is something we're working on at Gun.io, to be totally honest, because we're technically a company too, right? Like I know we closed up before we can get you onto the platform, right? Which is something that's bothered me and something that I have talked about, right? Is like, listen, like if we're trying to set the standard, we can't be like everybody else. And it's hard to do. It's so difficult to do. But if I were you and you keep getting ghosted, try to reach out to the hiring manager, just be like, hey, listen, like I know I got this automated email. Can you just give me one nugget? Here's the deal. I've spoken, this talk that I give at conferences, a manifesto in hiring. It's basically around how you should structure interviewing. But for me, like if you keep getting rejected, there's a lot of HR issues, which is why people don't want to give feedback.
Yeah.
And which sucks, right? And I tell hiring managers, just make it black and white. Hey, we needed these 3 things of React. You only have one of the 3 things. Sorry. That's very black and white. But unfortunately, company HR is just really getting in the way now, and it's really causing a lack of that. So for me, I would message the hiring manager just once. You don't want to get too like clingy and too weird. would be like, hey, listen, Mr. Manager, Mrs. Manager, I know I got rejected. I just got an automation email. Can you just give me one nugget of why I got, like, one thing I need to improve on, or one of the reasons why I got rejected? I will tell you this, for the most part, it's just because there's so many other applicants right now, and you just weren't exactly what they want, right? And that sucks to hear, but man, it just is so competitive right now that you're going to get ghosted more times than not.
Yeah.
But that's why you got to have mentors in with you. That's why you got to trust recruiters a little bit and build relationships with other people. If you build relationships with other people in your kind of niche, you can kind of get feedback with each other back and forth, right? So like, Todd, I'm Todd, Chris, and Homer, right? Like, all you guys are accessibility guys, right? Like, if you guys are experiencing something, or you're seeing something in the market, I'm sure you guys are on a text chain, be like, hey, I'm seeing this. What are you seeing? Are you seeing these? And again, that allows you not to kind of be in this echo chamber of like this ghosted thing where you're not getting any feedback real time.
Right. Yeah. And that does happen. Yeah. We, have been part of that for sure. For sure. Here's just a fun little question for you. And I alluded to this earlier. Why do I get approached by a recruiter out of the blue, whether it's LinkedIn or via email, and they say, hey, Todd, here's a position for, data entry, entry level, 35,000 a year,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Why am I getting that instead of the obvious, hey, you're an accessibility professional, here are some jobs that we're looking for?
I mean, I talk about this a lot. I think there's just, so every single recruiting agency that I know of is down 20, 30%, could be more.
Yeah.
And a lot of recruiting companies that are either backed by PE firm or backed by some venture capitalists are going to have metrics, because again, like, we don't sell t-shirts, right? So
Right.
you can't say, well, we made 15, like, it's not a math problem. Even though so many throughout my career, we've tried to math staffing, you can't, because you can make 2 calls. Like a prime example, right? I promise I'll get to the answer to this. I'm just like you with this. I got to take a whole story with it. Prime example. I worked with this one girl. She was a rock star recruiter, but she and I went about recruiting 2 different ways. Which now I kind of do what she does now, just 10 years later, right? She was ahead of the times.
Right.
I was very process oriented. I was the first guy in. I crushed it when it came to your traditional recruiting, cold calls, cold emails, job boards, LinkedIn Recruiter. I was the man when it came to that. Nobody beat me. The most calls, I was really good with copy, which really led me to my content. I knew how to frame emails and to get responses really well. This other girl who I recruited with, her name was Alethea. She's a senior recruiter now at Datadog. She would have no calls, no emails. But you know what she did? She would go out and spend money and do lunches and dinners. You see, like, kind of what I do now, right? The community building.
Right.
And she and I were always neck and neck for top 1 and 2 in our division for recruiters. And it annoyed the ever living dickens out of me. Right. like I was like, you're telling me I'm sitting here busting my balls to do it the way I'm supposed to. And we got this Alethea girl over here throwing parties and happy hours and not doing anything. And she's killing it too. So going back to your question, why are you getting called for jobs that are ridiculous, is because there are metrics with a lot of these companies, because they try to math staffing, and you can't math people.
Right.
And so, if you get a lot of these calls that are just out of the blue, you just got to move on. There's just a lot of spam. Believe it or not, starting a staffing business, while it is hard in some ways, it's easier than others. There's not a lot of overhead. You need a cell phone and the internet. That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
And like a really good a lawyer, a really good lawyer. And that's it. My buddy started a company. He's doing pretty well. He started it 2 years ago. That's what he said. He goes, it's low. Oh, you should get a cell phone, internet, computer, and you're good to go. So
yeah,
For me, like that's why you get a lot of spam calls, because like, even if you're bad at recruiting, you can still be kind of good at a recruiting, if that makes sense, because then you can just, then it's just volume, and then you'll eventually get one because there's just so much volume.
Yeah, it's like being a manager in tech. You can be bad at it, but you can also be good in it.
Exactly.
You can stumble back into the position and still be good at it in some areas. So
Yeah.
I get that. So Gun.io.
Yep.
You're there now. Tell me about it. Tell me what you do there. Tell me how you like it.
Yeah.
Tell me, give me the lowdown on, I have my account. What do I have to look for when, you're letting more people in, and how are you going to help me?
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, we're at a crossroads right now. So I'll give you kind of so for those of you who are still listening through this podcast, first off, thank you. Second off, Gun.io is a talent marketplace. So there's a whole, I didn't realize this industry existed. It's basically like, depending on how you do it, it's kind of like recruiting 2.0, depending on how you structure your staff. Now, our staff, we have a technical developer relations team who takes out everybody. Who actually also helps match our candidates to your open jobs. So it's really cool how we do it. So talent marketplaces, for those of you who don't know, kind of the concept is to get into a community, a Slack, a Discord. We have a Slack channel, a private Slack channel, where you're in community with 3,000 other senior engineers. Right now, you have to go through an interview process with us. Originally at Gun.io, it was what I've learned this recently. When we started, it was kind of every man, women for themselves. You can join the platform. Well, that created a bunch of spam, as I'm sure you can probably imagine. The quality was terrible. And at the end of the day, we're also a product company. We're kind of what I call a talent product company, because while we do place software engineers in jobs, our community is our product, right? And so we basically had, so the iteration was everybody on, cut that off. And then the second iteration I learned recently was we had what was it? Kind of a pseudo sign up. Like you had to take like one eval, but the quality was still terrible. Like too many terrible engineers were still getting into it. So then now we switched to like a 3-step process. Now, that being said, we have grown our marketing. They hired me. I don't know if it's because of me. I don't know if it's a coincidence that I joined 4 months ago, 5 months ago at this point, and then they had to halt the platform because they were getting 700-800 engineers a week applying to be on the platform. It's probably not me. But all that being said, we need to figure out moving forward on how to be intentional when it comes to both bringing on engineers to our platform, but also helping them find jobs. Because what's happening is we were letting in all types of skill sets. So we had like our most competitive skill set on the platform is React and Node. Basically, like if you don't work at like Netflix, you pretty much can't get on if you're a React engineer, because like our platform is so deep with talent. So now what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out how do we be intentional when it comes to bringing our people onto our platform, but also giving them a chance at jobs too. Because then if you have like a 1,000 React developers on our platform, we have a job, you're probably, you're doing the same, you're in the same issue as you are with if you're not on our platform. Right. So we're definitely trying to figure this out. Our VP of engineering is former Amazon engineering manager. He's very passionate about community. And we are an engineering led organization. We have a product team. We have an engineering team building this cool product for hiring managers to be able to see our talent too, which is coming out next year. But all that being said, everything's kind of on pause to bringing on talent, which is a bummer, because I know there's a lot of interest from guys like you and just my community who want to get on, and I want to get y'all on, but we got to try to figure out how to be intentional, which again, I love being a part of Gun.io because I'm a part of the engineering community, which is wonderful. They're allowing me to kind of be my full self at work, which is obviously, it's very rare for that to happen. And then also too, I can also leverage my network and help my network more. So we have a lot of things we got to work on. And again, I mean, I'm very vocal on Twitter about this, like bear with us, but I definitely think that what we're trying to do is going to radically change the way companies hire engineers.
Yeah. And I got the feeling, so when I initially signed on and made an account, I initially felt this is different from your normal Indeed, Monster,
Yes.
LinkedIn. Very, very different. So and I'm with this, I can wait all day. I am very patient. So when that door,
Yeah.
swings open,
Yeah. I'll
I'll
let you
walk
know.
right through.
Yeah.
Um, cool. And we'll have all these, all the information in the show notes
Yeah.
for everybody. Um, and we've gone over, how to maximize and how to leverage your network to your advantage, you know. But is there anything that you can think of that we might have missed as far as that goes, leveraging your network to your advantage, at any level, really?
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice is if you're gonna go down this road and you're in your like, let's say you listen to this podcast and you're just fired up and want to run through a brick wall after this podcast, which I understand we have the tendency to do that to people. I will tell you it's going to feel weird because we as human beings confuse activity with productivity.
Mhm.
So people out here, I submitted 100 applications today. I don't give a shit because it's not going anywhere, right? But if you told me, man, I had 3 meaningful conversations with potential hiring managers in my network, I'm going to say that person wins the day, right? And so I will tell you, you're going to feel like you're not getting anywhere. You're going to be seeing online of people applying to hundreds of places. I would say this: none of their applications are getting viewed. None of them. None of them. Now, of course, I have people that listen to podcasts in my labs when I say this, and and they're like, "Well, I found a job by mass applying." Well, props to you, right? But you also can't build a house with just a screwdriver. So don't only just rely on mass applying for your job search. So if you do this and you do it well, it's going to be exhausting. It's going to take time, but you're also going to find a job a lot quicker.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to throw this out there because I just saw somebody who wrote about it. And if I find that post, I will put it in the show notes. They took the data from easy applying on LinkedIn and did something like 180 or 120 or 180 or so easy applications, only like 7 responses, and one they got to the second round, but then they got ghosted. So easy apply is not so easy when it comes to LinkedIn.
Especially right now, you got to remember, like, everybody's on the job search right now. So
Yeah.
literally, like, easy apply was a lot better when it was 2 years ago because everybody had jobs.
Yeah.
But now, again, think about it. Like, if you apply, you're applying with 300, 400 other people.
Yeah.
The math just doesn't math.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So which area of tech do you see the more, okay, I guess I want to say most promise as far as job openings go, but maybe it could be worded a little different. I mean, the best outlook, I guess, as far as which part of tech, like
I see what you're
React
saying.
developers or
Yeah.
Vue developers.
So I will say this. I see glimmers of hope. I have been approached. Like I said, I've brought in 5 clients in 5 or 6 months. That's a pretty good clip. Like, that's kind of like normal times for me.
Mhm.
I've messaged with one of my recruiter friends. He's had so much interest lately that he's actually starting his own thing. And I've seen a lot of my recruiter friends kind of post the same thing. So I do think there's light at the end of the tunnel. However, I think when it comes to technical skill sets, I think back-end engineering is where it's at right now. I think there is just a plethora of front-end folks. I think accessibility is still niche enough where I think there's just not a lot of y'all running around. But I do think, like, back-end engineering, Python, Java, cloud services, DevOps, like, when React came out, there was such a money grab for React devs that I think there was a lot of folks who were maybe full stack split, just went all in on React. Y'all, there's like a gajillion of y'all out there now.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this, you're like, well, I'm fucked. You're not fucked. I'm just
Right.
saying, like, I think if you have an interest in going back to the back end, I would probably consider it, at least right now, because there's a dime a dozen React engineers. But then when we get a back end Python or Java engineer, we're like, where the fuck do we find these people?
Yeah. exactly. Um, where do you see the least growth? And I'm looking at from here, from my perspective. A few months ago, I was like, I'm trying to move out of accessibility simply because I don't want to do the auditing part anymore. The auditing, it burnt me out months ago, and I just I'm out of that burnout, and I want to stay out of that burnout. you know I want to move to something else. And I'm originally thinking DevRel, because DevRel, I do advocating already for accessibility. So, a lot of my DevRel friends are in people we both know are like, you're 50% there already. It's just the other half that you have to learn and focus on. I'm looking at DevRel now and being like, companies aren't valuing DevRel at
No,
all, and
no.
that's taken a hit. So where would you see the space that's getting the, I guess, going downhill, so to speak?
Uh, let me know if this answers your question. If not, I'll try to reframe it.
Okay.
I think if you want to stay in DevRel, I think you got to just be okay with coding and doing DevRel on the side, if that makes sense. Kind of like me, right? Like I'm a sales guy that does DevRel stuff on the side, right? And so I think I don't think the market will pick back up with DevRel until much longer. So
Right.
yeah. I don't know if that answers your question exactly, but in my mind, like company want people to code right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I would
Yeah.
I would say to do that. Yeah. So
Yeah, it seems like in the past few months, 2, 3, 4 months, that just DevRel is just taking a hit so hard. And
yeah, it is interesting. I mean, this could be a whole nother podcast, but like I think
yeah.
what Gun.io is doing to me, I think is really interesting. They basically created a marketing attribution on the website that like when you sign up, if you're a company or a candidate, you have to pick where you heard about us, and you can pick from me. And it's actually been a pretty good indicator on what I'm doing. So like with the latest stat before we paused it, I brought in 90 developers in about 4 months of the platform, 3 months of the
Mm-hmm.
platform. That's 30 developers a month. That's one a
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Right. And then from a company perspective, I've brought in, I think some of it's spam, don't get me wrong, but I think there's
Right.
been like 20 companies that have selected my information, and I've closed about 5 of them at this point. So, and that way they've been able to track a little bit more. And so for companies who listen to this, I think that's actually a really good way to maybe talk about how to quantify your DevRel a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, those are pretty much the questions, the topics I wanted to hit to today.
I love it.
And I know I think we're coming up around time already now.
Yeah.
But you know, seeing you and hearing you at conferences is something that I highly suggest anybody that's, has any interest in what Taylor has to offer. Go grab those tickets, go see those talks, go see those, presentations. You have your podcasts, and you have your streams there. You're on LinkedIn, you're on YouTube, and you're everywhere.
Yeah.
You are like the guy in my area who is on the billboards everywhere. Call Rafi. You're
There you
like
go.
Call Rafi. You are everywhere. But it's great to see, because you are, you're a valuable resource, especially in this time, where everything is so volatile as
Yeah.
far as the job market goes. So I want to first thank you for coming on.
Absolutely, brother.
I want to secondly ask you this. Beer league hockey. Let me tell you how bad I miss getting out on the ice,
Yeah.
because this old guy, I'm about 150 pounds heavier, and 2 bad knees and 2 bad ankles later.
I'll do
it. Blocking shots and stuff. I see those, and I'm just like, I'm living vicariousvicariously through you. I hope you know.
Appreciate
Um,
that.
how's the team doing? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm on a upper B league team here in Nashville. There's a upper A, which is essentially like ex pros. There's a lower A, which, to be honest, we could play lower A. I actually subbed in a lower A game, and it was about the same tempo. And then upper B, which is what we play, lower B, et cetera, all the way down to rookie. And so my brother and I run a team. We're sponsored by a local barbecue joint here in town called Martin's Barbecue. We kind of took over the team. We're at the bottom of the table, little soccer term, bottom of the table in the lower B league, and we took it over, won lower B, and now we've won upper B, and we've gone to the championship 4 times in 4 years, and or four times in 2 years. There's two seasons a year, but and we're 2-2. We've won 2 and we've lost 2 in the championship, but yeah, it's fun. So right now we're 5-1-1, off to really our best start I think ever. And we have a good group of guys, a lot of Michigan guys, a lot of Michigan and New York. Actually, what's crazy just about the power community is a lot of the guys on my team, like one guy helps me with my content. Another guy runs like a health podcast, and then he's gotten another guy on my team because this other guy is big on the health side of things as well. So we have a really good community and really good team, bunch of good dudes. So it's fun playing with them.
Yeah, and like I said, every time I see those posts you have, it's just like, man, what I wouldn't give just go even one shift out on the ice and just
Yeah.
I miss it. I really do. But yeah, and also at the same time, this is also we're talking about hiring, or we're talking about the job market, but also I'm glad we talked about community, because community is very important. In that networking. So I'm glad we got all these topics that we could cover, and it kind of encompasses the whole thing. So this has been a fantastic podcast for me, and as always, it's always good to see you, always good to hear you. And yeah, is there anything else that we might have missed that you want to cover?
Not at all. Go follow me, social media, TDESSEYN. Appreciate you having me, Todd. Means a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor, and thank you, listeners and viewers on YouTube channel. This has been the Front End Nerdery podcast. I am Todd Libby. This is it. This is going to be a bonus episode for December. The regular episode will be out, and then this is my bonus episode. We will probably have a end of year wrap up little episode after, but looking forward to next year, because my co-host Homer and we've got some changes in the books that are going to be awesome. So
Awesome.
With that, I want to thank you again, Taylor, and thank you, listeners and viewers, for watching and listening. And this has been the Front End Nerdery podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.